Christopher Key Chopel, Doshi Professor, Indic and Comparative Theology, Founding Director, Master of Arts in Yoga Studies, Loyola Marymount University, Los Angeles, US. Sir is a specialist in the religions of India. He has published more than 20 books, including the recent Living Landscapes, Meditation on Elements in Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain's Yoga. He serves as an advisor to multiple organizations, including the Forum on Religion and Ecology at Yale, the Ahimsa Center at Panama, the Dharma Academy of North America at Berkeley, the Jain Study Center at London, the South Asian Study Association and International School for Jain Studies at New Delhi. He teaches online through the Center for Religion and Spirituality and Yoga Globe. Sir, on behalf of Seshadripuram Education Trust, I wholeheartedly welcome you for this international webinar.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. And as I sit here in your company, I want to ask us to send our good thoughts to one another and to all of our families during these difficult times.
Thanks, sir. I'm happy to introduce and welcome Sri Krishna Swami K, Honorary Trustee, Seshadripuram Education Trust. Sir has Masters in Law degree in Law degree and started practice in 1987 before High Court of Karnataka. Sir is a life member of various cooperative and other institutions. Sir is a member of Seshadripuram Education Trust since 1995. Got elected as trustee in 2001. He is a chairman of Governing Council of Seshadripuram Law College. Sir, on behalf of Seshadripuram Uni Degree College, I welcome and I request you to preside over this webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I welcome all the office. Thank you, sir. I welcome all the office bearers and trustees of Seshadripuram Education Trust and all the principals of our sister institutions, other heads of the institution, conveners, volunteers, and all the participants who have registered across the globe. I welcome Dharappa Konnur, Program Coordinator, Sunil Kumar G, Coordinator IQAC, and finally, I welcome our own teaching and administrative faculties to this webinar. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir, for welcoming all. On behalf of all, I welcome our beloved principal, sir, to this international webinar. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
May I now request Christopher K. Chapel, Doshi Professor, Indic and Comparative Theology, Founding Director, Master of Arts in Yoga Studies, Loyola Marymount University, Los Angeles, United States, to render the theme address. Over to you, sir.
Yes. I'm happy to be with you. And we gather in tender times. We gather at a moment of triple disarray. From Indian philosophy, we know that our world is comprised of the three gunas, of tamas, of rajas, and sattva. And we find ourselves at this particular moment with a difficult reality. And what I will speak today about entails three aspects of difficulty. The first is microbial. We are in the throes of a global pandemic that is affecting all 7 continents, even Antarctica, caused by the smallest of living units, a virus. We find ourselves also in the throes, particularly here in the United States, of social upheaval. Clashes between groups of people are at a level of intensity not seen for many, many years. And our third area of difficulty is the planet herself. And as we come to grips with the after effects of a luxurious lifestyle, we are confronting levels of pollution, levels of climate disorder, again, the likes of which the planet has not experienced for many thousands of years. Some of you perhaps know people whose lives have been lost due to the pandemic. I, in fact, have a good friend and colleague from Calcutta whose parents were hospitalized and whose father, about my age, expired. Throughout our region, in Southern California, the west coast of the United States, our hospitals are full and many hundreds of people are dying every day. Second, we have a legacy as human beings of conflict. We have inbuilt, according to the Buddhists, 3 difficulties. According to the yogis, 5 difficulties. According to Jains, 4 difficulties. Regardless, 3, 4, or 5, human beings have a capacity for hatred. Human beings have a capacity for greed. Human beings have a capacity for delusion. Human greed causes people to take more and more and more from one another and from Mother Earth herself. Human beings have a capacity to other people dissimilar from oneself. In the history of the United States, the history of imperial conquest of the New World, of the Americas, North and South, the imperial history of the fight between the British and the French playing out on the subcontinent of India itself, within the very state of Karnataka, reminds us of this primal capacity for hatred. The slave trade in the United States, the indentured servitude into which so many Indians entered, human bondage. Not just, oh, I feel compelled to be the best, the greatest, but human bondage that externalizes this fear and this anger, thinking that conquest and violence must be enacted because one group feels superior to another group. Slavery in the United States has left a very dark mark on our history that continues. The concept and the reality of conquest, human conquest, one group after another, inseparable from our sense as a species. If we think back to early Indian history, when Ashoka conquered Kalinga, resulting in the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of people, his conscience spoke to him, and he said, no more. Unfortunately, deranged thinking, delusional thinking, grounded in racial hatred, grounded in overweening and displaced pride, has caused not a change of heart toward the better, but has caused an unhinged leader right here in the United States of America to turn people against their very own government, resulting in loss of life, resulting in deep, deep humiliation here in the United States. Whenever a demagogue speaks up in such a way to incite people against people, to hold power, disastrous consequences ensue. Mahatma Gandhi, many years ago, said he thought Western civilization would be a very good idea. And as we know, Gandhi set forth an alternative way of dealing with this all too dangerous situation of human capacity for oppression. He was thrown off the train in India, rather in South Africa, and he was othered in such a way that went to the core of his sense of personhood, that violated his sense of human dignity. And he fought for that dignity in a way that has transformed human history. He asked each and every human person to consider and reconsider what it means to have these faculties, meaning the human body, human speech, shall we use this gift of life not only to oppress other people directly, but shall we use this human life to be complicit in models of oppression, systems of oppression that have hurt so many? Or shall we use this human life for the sake of uplift, of sarvodaya, of bringing everyone into a better place? And with great bravery and with decades of reflection, he experimented. He spoke with other people. He learned from the wisdom of Tolstoy. He learned from the wisdom and insight of Emerson and Thoreau. He learned from the mistakes of the American experiment, and he rediscovered the beauty of Indian thought as articulated in the Bhagavad Gita. I'm going to, if all goes well, share screen. And I'll share this paper, soon to be published, that includes many of these reflections. And before we turn to the Bhagavad Gita, I want to open with a poem by William Butler Yeats. British imperialism began hundreds and hundreds of years ago as the British invaded and occupied and dominated the neighbor island of Ireland. And William Butler Yeats came from a family of British oppressors. And he had a change of heart as an adult man. And he came to, rather than despise the Irish language, rather than despise the Irish culture, which was nearly stamped out, he gave uplift and support to a movement that freed Ireland only a couple of decades before the freedom of India. And he worked closely with his Swami teacher from India in reading the Upanishads, in learning the wisdom of yoga and Vedanta. And he called out in this very famous poem, of which we have a small piece here, he called out the need, as we see in the Isha Upanishad, the Isha Upanishad, that the beginning of sanity requires experiencing and exploring the truth of darkness and the darkness of truth. In our case, pandemic, social injustice, climate change. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. This center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. These beautiful lines so encapsulate the morass of illness, overwhelming hospitals throughout the world. The best lack all conviction. So many even now resist criticizing the illegal, insurrectionist, seditious actions of the President of the United States. And the worst continue with their plotting. Attacks upon the Michigan State House, attacks upon the US Capitol. Since before the American Civil War, a group now in control of the Union has done its level best to foster hatred, to lynch hundreds and hundreds of Black people in the United States. And these same forces in 1924 made it impossible for any person of Indian origin to enter and settle in the United States. And this, for more than 4 decades, was the rule of law. Immigration only available to people of European origin. And slowly, slowly, first with abolition, then with the campaign for civil rights, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi and a great theologian, Howard Thurman, came to India, lived in South India in 1935 and 1936, met with the Mahatma, studied the ways of nonviolent resistance. And then in the 1950s, James Lawson, still teaching here in Los Angeles, lived, taught school in India, in Nagpur, and learned from Vinoba Bhave, learned from the Gandhians of Sevagram Ashram. And when he returned to the United States, started a training, trained John Lewis, trained Rosa Parks, trained Martin Luther King Jr. in the ways of the Bhagavad Gita. And before I turn to a little bit of inspiration for us all, I want to talk about this word, gyre. In the Pacific Ocean, extending for hundreds and hundreds of miles, we see a gyre of plastic particulate matter that is literally choking the life of the ocean. When I was living in India in 2019, there was a celebration of remembrance of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. And there was a declaration banning single-use plastics. And I've been coming to India now a full 40 years. And I think that we, with a little bit of white in our visage, all remember those hellacious moments when the plastic bags in India were just snagging in trees. They continue to build up on the roadsides. And this pollution, which may just seem like an annoyance, in fact is disturbing the very fabric of life itself. And it's only one warning sign of the dangers of human domination over the planet. And if that gyre continues to grow, if that heating of the planet continues to rise, we will be choked from above and choked from below. So what do we do? What do we do with the immediacy of the loss of millions of lives around the planet? What do we do with the immediacy of global leaders who stoke up hatred, one group against the other? What do we do with the byproducts of human greed that are threatening the foundations of life itself? So when Mahatma Gandhi landed in India, or rather moved from India to London to take up the study of law, he joined the Vegetarian Society, which explained to him the science and the history of the benefits of vegetarianism. And through translation of the Bhagavad Gita by Sir Edwin Arnold into a gorgeous rendering called the Song Celestial, he discovered that through literature, through considered philosophical reflection, a sort of self can be discovered that backs away from hatred, greed, and delusion. A self can be found that rises above the bases, the lowest of human impulse. Sthita prajna. To establish oneself in prajna, to establish oneself in a knowledge that goes forth, to establish oneself in wisdom is the birthright of each and every human being. Arjuna, facing a moment not unlike our own moment, sat there in the chariot, the metaphor for the human body, with those five senses yoked through the horses driving the chariot, and he looked up to his charioteer, his better self, and he said, all of this is insane. And think the microbes eating away at the lungs of people. Racists and bigots destroying the lives and property of those very people designed and elected, those very offices designed to uphold human order, and those very people elected and pledged to uphold human order under assault. And then the very planet itself. We think of the Kundava forest conflagration that took place before the establishment of Hastinapur. I mean, history repeats. History repeats. We keep learning, and we must keep learning. So with all of that, this question posed by Arjuna is the question of our times. How can the person of steady wisdom be described? The one accomplished in deep meditation. How does the person of steady vision speak, sit, move? And the key begins within that chariot of body, mind, and emotions. When a person leaves behind all desires that arise in the mind, Arjuna, and is contented in the self with the self, that one is said to be of steady wisdom. The person not agitated, okay, eyes wide open and fully aware of what's happening, but yet not agitated by suffering, whose yearnings for pleasures have evaporated, whose passion, fear, and anger have evaporated. That person has become steady in vision. And I have a dear colleague, and we talk about these issues at university again and again and again. And the debate in the United States from the 1960s, for some, says, oh, Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, nonviolence. No, we need to be bold. We need to take action. And at moments like this, Gandhi carries the day. Because those who protest peacefully, those who have been trained, as Martin Luther King Jr., my colleagues, Bob and Helen Singleton, freedom riders who went to Selma in 1960, 1961, and withstood the blows of the Billy Club and endured months of imprisonment. We call this moral suasion. Michelle Obama said, we take the higher road, and is said by Martin Luther King Jr., the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. This stain upon American history, the events of January 6, 2021, show the wisdom of Sthita Prajna, show the wisdom of desisting, pulling back from the passions, pulling back from fear, pulling back from anger, resisting hatred toward the other. And when this person can draw away from the objects of sense by recognizing the senses themselves. And here, I want to say that for 50 years, I dedicated myself to a life of meditation, and every day engage in this very activity. Like a tortoise drawing on those limbs of philosophically what are called prapancha, always going for the external, always going for the thrill, always going for ego assurance and ego building. Meditation gives us respite from that all too human impulse. And it's a lifelong journey. The rapacious senses carry away the mind as if by force. But slowly, steadily, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, decade by decade, we must apply restraint on all sides. Because fixation on objects generates attachment, attachment generates desire, desire generates anger, anger generates delusion, and from delusion, mindfulness wanders. One loses one's intelligence. Think of those proud boy white supremacists. Where was their intelligence? Where was their sense of dignity? By the loss of intelligence, one perishes. 5 people dead in the Capitol building. The seat of American democracy, 5 people dead. So what do we need to do? We need to give up desire and hatred. We must establish control over the self. There is no intelligence if one is not disciplined. And if one is not disciplined, there is no meditation. And without meditation, there is no tranquility, there is no peace. And we have learned all too well the last few days in America that without that inner peace, there can be no happiness. I discovered these verses when I had just turned 18 years old. And I began my immersion into the life and world and the language of the Sanskrit language of the Bhagavad Gita when I was 17, turned 18 that very semester, my first semester at university. And I remember this assessment of the human condition. And I continued all through my undergraduate years to read in the Sanskrit original and to chant out these and the other verses of the Bhagavad Gita. And this gives us hope. This assessment of the human condition that says we have the capacity to be better. We have the capacity to rise above. We have the capacity to allow Dharma, to allow justice to prevail. India gained its freedom through these words, through the repeated imprisonment of Mahatma Gandhi, of Sri Aurobindo, through those brave acts of courage and commitment to a vision of human dignity, goodness can and must prevail. We all have the capacity to abandon our petty desires, to move free from lust, free from possessiveness, free from ego. With that tranquility, with that peace, we claim and reclaim our birthright. We claim that dignity that Eleanor Roosevelt lifted up in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And every day becomes a test. We must be vigilant about the microbes. We must wear a mask. We must keep socially distant. Not just for our own health, but for the health of others. We must every day allow ourselves to go into that dark place of wanting to other, wanting to hate those who do not look like we do, those who do not eat the same foods that we do, those who do not live in our own protected neighborhood. We must resist the hatred, the all too human hatred. We must resist that temptation to see ourselves, our ego, our group as the superior group. And interrogate, how can I be part of the solution rather than perpetuate the problem? And then the planet herself. The Prithvi Sukta of the Atharva Veda gives such great praise to Mother Earth. That text we need to revisit. That wisdom we need to implement every time we take plastic, every time we fire up the petrol in the automobile. We're stoking the origins of the hatred, greed, and delusion that created an economy that in the long run is becoming our downfall rather than a source of comfort. So in words often attributed to Gandhi, there is enough in the world for human need. And sadly, again and again, we go after the impulse triggered, activated by human greed. So as we move into questions, I really welcome your reflections and observations about how to operationalize this wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, how best to move from human greed into a recognition of human need, both for self, family, community, society, and the entire planet. And I'll share this writing with you so that you'll have some time for further reflection. So thank you. Namaste.
Thank you very much, sir, for your insightful theme address. Now, the floor is open for the interaction. As we are running out of time, we take up only few questions which we have received in the chat box. I request Vinay Sagar sir to moderate the interaction session.
Thank you, Sunil sir. Sir, we have a question. How do you correlate environmentalism with religious and cultural context?
There's a wonderful social thinker called Paulo Freire, and he advocated in Brazil a process called conscientization. And in order for change to happen, people must engage in satyagraha. This means that we must know history. We must interrogate, investigate social structures, and we must investigate the human heart and mind. And I'm going to give a very small example that may not hold relevance, but nonetheless, to be a Gandhian means to pay attention to one's consumption of food and consumption of creature comforts. I studied for 12 years at an ashram with a woman called Anjali Inti. Her family was of Assamese origin, and she studied classical yoga while growing up during the freedom fight in India. She lived in Calcutta and brought that Gandhian wisdom to us. And she wrote a song that says, "The earth is burning, the sky is ablaze. The earth is burning, the sky is ablaze." And through our daily practice of yama and niyama, starting with ahimsa and culminating in so many ways in a parigraha, she trained us to think carefully, to think twice before we consume. And what we have done is two very small things. And again, not particularly necessarily relevant right now in India, but perhaps will become more and more so. But we rethought our transportation. And the American economy, which has destroyed the atmosphere, has literally been powered by the automobile, by the burning of gasoline, of petrol. And what we've been able to do in our household is to put solar panels on our roof and to put electric cars in our garage. One small act. Another is that every time we go to the food market, our food choices are wrapped in the stuff of petroleum. And in this household, we very much cherish our dahi, our yogurt. And what we did is we got out of the cupboard our yogurt maker, so that rather than buying that yogurt in plastic that is so convenient in the supermarket, we have now the dry yogurt starter, and we take the milk and we boil it and we go through the process once a week. And rather than using even more plastic, we're able to rewash and to reuse the glass jars from which now we obtain our yogurt. Now, those are very seemingly small acts, but if replicated by 7 billion people, such things could help ameliorate the difficult situation in which we find ourselves. And just as Paulo Freire suggested, each and every one of us must, through our conscience, come to an awareness of our own complicity and generate our own solutions that, again, replicated 7 billion times across the planet, can lead to Sarvodaya. So it begins at home and ripples throughout the economy. And as it ripples throughout the economy, it changes society. Two small examples.
Sir, we have one participant, Dr. Vittal Poddar, sir, Senior Research Fellow, Mythic Society, Bangalore. Sir wants to ask one question to you, sir. Over to Vittal Poddar, sir.
Good morning, Professor Christopher. We had met in UNT in April 2018 along with George James in a conference, Environment and Jainism. I'm very happy to once again see you in this international conference. My question is, Indian religions are highly environmental conscious. What is your reaction?
Walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And with the threefold difficulty of virus, social inequality, and planetary plunder, we need not just to think, oh, how lovely, Prithvi Sukta. We need to operationalize. The wisdom of the Jain Munis, sadhus and sadhvis, wearing the mupati, thousands of years of wisdom, the wisdom to strain the water to keep it pure, the wisdom to filter the air to keep it pure, and that will save and is saving lives. The ability to be humble. Now we have a homelessness situation. My wife and I are involved in small local ways to help. And I remember when I first saw homeless people was in India 40 years ago. And now what was absolutely shocking is something that we witness every single day when we leave our homes. We have people wandering, their brains addled by drug addiction and by deep mental illness. And our social fabric has collapsed. Tens of thousands of people in this region, this county alone, unsheltered. Okay, this is not sustainable. And then the fires that raged in 2019 in Australia, that raged throughout the western states of the United States. Okay, this calls out for a wisdom that we have found, that we know exists within the Prithvi Sukta, within the words of the Bhagavad Gita, within Gandhi. We need to step away from human greed, but how to operationalize, how to take direct action with our own body, mind, and emotion, how to take legislative action, and how to rethink global economy away from this trivialization of the human into a target to be swept up in a digital realm that mirrors back a life that values glamour and gossip, that can quickly be shifted over, as happened in Uganda, as happened in Madagascar, has happened in the United States, where people fall into the falsehood and become stoked up into acts of insurrection, of violence against self, violence against that other. So does the wisdom of India contribute to the solution? Yes. But we must always guard against complacency. Just as the Buddha said, don't do things just because I say them. The Buddha was a good scientist, and he said, try it out for yourself. And we need to heed the wisdom of science. We need to return to those shastras that speak truth. And only then is there hope for repair.
Another small question, then do you think that Bhagavad Gita should become a guidebook for entire mankind in modern times?
With judicious and careful insight. And I've also seen the Bhagavad Gita invoked in order to destroy property in India. I've seen the Bhagavad Gita used in order to stoke up hatred and violence. Gandhi's Gita is a different Gita. To me, it's the true Gita, the Mahabharata. Everyone needs to know that story. It's the story of family hatred, and it calls out the worst of human possibility. And what we need to do is to be willing to go into the darkness of the human soul, into the darkness of social inequality, into the darkness of planetary systems disorder caused by human intervention. And rather than just saying, we're the greatest because we have this wisdom, we have to be humbled by this wisdom. We have to come to a place where we stand up, whatever our social location, whatever our family location, and say, it's not okay to hate other people. Human lives are lost. It's not okay to inflict violence against sacred property. It's not okay to allow that greed to fester in the human soul. It's not okay to allow that greed to fester like a virus in society. And the good news is that the violence of the last several decades is so diminished when compared to the violence of that hellacious period between 1939 and 1945, when hundreds of millions of human lives perished. And that type of warfare, I'd like to think, will never happen. But the problem is, it could. And we need to be forever vigilant on the personal sphere, on the biological sphere, on the social sphere, on the planetary sphere. And without vigilance, the human condition goes downward. And we must work towards Sarvodaya, to the uplift of all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Vittal, sir.
Thank you.
Well, we are running out of time. Thank you so much. And this is what all about from the Q&A session. Over to Sunil Kumar, sir.
Thank you very much, our resourceful speaker, for answering the questions of the participants. A small announcement before the presidential remarks. We send the feedback form link now in the chat box as well as to your registered email, which will be active for next 48 hours. Kindly fill the same and send back for e-certificate. The e-certificates will reach you from 7 to 10 days. Very shortly, we will meet in one more international webinar of our evening college, that is on 15th of this month, coming Friday. The topic is Digital Humanities Session 2 in association with University of California, Los Angeles, US, Edith Cowan University, Perth, Australia, Digital Humanities Alliance for Research and Teaching Innovations, India. Now I request Sri Krishnaswamy K. Trustee, Seshadripuram Educational Trust, Bengaluru, to render the presidential remarks.
Well, good morning, sir, Christopher Ji. And today's subject was really wonderful and leading to our own religious and cultural context, especially Bhagavad Gita, the teachings of Lord Krishna. So Christopher Ji has given a wonderful speech highlighting everything with the conversations between Arjuna and Krishna. Really, it's a good thing. I hope all the participants have really enjoyed it. And I thank our Christopher Ji for giving us our own Bhagavad Gita. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And our principal, Mr. Satish Ji, is actually, this is 25th, it seems, webinar. It's a good one, good subject. Of course, it is a very vast subject. And our speaker, Christopher Ji, has given a compendium to say, to think it over, and practicing is very, very important for that. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir, for rendering the presidential remarks. I now request Vinay Sagar LS, Assistant Professor, to render oath of thanks.
It is my proud privilege to propose vote of thanks on behalf of Seshadripuram Evening Degree College on this occasion. At the outset, I thank Loyola Marymount University, Los Angeles, USA for cooperation to conduct this international webinar. I'd like to express our sincere thanks to Christopher Key Chapel, Professor, Indic and Comparative Theology, Founding Director, Master of Arts in Yoga Studies, Loyola Marymount University, USA, for giving an excellent coverage on the theme. Thank you, sir, for your valuable words. You are the person who has given a real shape to this webinar. I express our wholehearted thanks to Sri K. Krishnaswamy sir, renowned advocate before the High Court of Karnataka, Honorary Trustee, Seshadripuram Educational Trust, Bengaluru, India. Sir, we are grateful to your support for all our programs. Thank you, sir, for your presidential remarks. My special thanks to our beloved principal, Professor N.S. Satish sir, who is a zeal of our Seshadripuram Evening Degree College. I would like to thank all the office bearers of Loyola Marymount University, Los Angeles, USA. I'd like to thank Dharapa Konnur, Head Department of English and Convener Nisarga Mitra. Sunil Kumar Ji, Coordinator, IQAC, who has helped us to materialize this webinar. I express our gratitude to all the principals, conveners, and members of our sister institutions and other colleges, academicians, research scholars, students, and delegates across the globe for participating in this webinar. We will ever remain grateful to our teaching and administrative staff for their support. Thank you, one and all. I remain.
Thank you, Vanessa. Once again, thank each and everyone. Now we are conclude the webinar.
Thank you, Christopher, sir. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.